In the beginning, being an empath feels like a gift. You feel everything deeply. You understand people without words. You care more than most. But after years of emotional exhaustion, betrayal, and learning hard lessons, something begins to change inside you. You are not losing your empathy. You are transforming it into power. At the beginning of your journey, being an empath often feels overwhelming. You walk into a room and instantly sense the emotional atmosphere. You can feel tension even when no one is speaking about it. Someone's sadness, anger, or anxiety can silently move through you like a wave. For a long time, you may not even realize what is happening. You simply assume that the heavy emotions you carry belong to you, but many of those feelings are not yours at all. They are absorbed from the people and environments around you. This is why many empaths spend years feeling emotionally exhausted, confused, or drained without understanding why. In the early stages, empaths often become emotional sponges. They listen to everyone's problems, comfort everyone's pain, and try to bring peace wherever conflict appears. Friends come to them for advice. Family members lean on them during difficult moments. Strangers sometimes feel comfortable sharing their deepest struggles with them. While this ability to understand others deeply is a beautiful gift, it can also become a silent burden. Without strong emotional boundaries, the empath slowly begins to carry emotional boundaries that was never meant for them. Over time, this constant absorption of other people's energy begins to take a toll. Empaths may feel tired even after resting. They may feel sadness without knowing its source. They might start avoiding crowds or intense social situations because the emotional noise becomes too loud to handle. Many empaths go through a period of questioning themselves. They wonder why they feel so much when others seem unaffected. They may even believe that something is wrong with them, when in reality, they are simply experiencing the world with a deeper emotional awareness. The turning point happens when the empath begins to develop awareness of their emotional sensitivity. Instead of automatically absorbing every feeling around them, they start observing emotional energy with more clarity. They learn to pause and ask themselves an important question. Is this emotion truly mine? This simple awareness becomes a powerful shift. It creates a small but important space between the empath and the emotions surrounding them. As this awareness grows, the empath starts learning the skill of emotional mastery. They realize that understanding someone's pain does not mean they must carry it. Compassion does not require self-sacrifice. Compassion does not require self-sacrifice. Empathy does not mean losing oneself inside other people's emotional storms. The evolved empath begins to hold space for others without absorbing their suffering. They listen, they understand, but they remain grounded within their own emotional center. This transformation does not happen overnight. It is a gradual process of learning boundaries, self-awareness, and emotional discipline. Empaths start protecting their energy by limiting exposure to toxic environments, negative conversations, and emotionally manipulative individuals. They become more selective about where they invest their time and attention. Instead of reacting instantly to every emotional signal, they learn to respond with calm observation. Eventually, the empaths who once absorbed everything become someone who can stand in the middle of emotional chaos without being consumed by it. They still sense what others feel, but they remain steady within themselves. Their sensitivity turns into clarity. Their awareness becomes a quiet form of strength. They no longer drown in emotional waves because they have learned how to stand firmly on the shore while still understanding the ocean in front of them. Many empaths spend a large part of their lives trying to make everyone happy. From a young age, they often become the peacemaker in the room, the person who smooths over arguments, comforts hurt feelings, and sacrifices their own needs just to keep harmony around them. They sense tension quickly, and instead of letting people resolve their own emotions, they step in to fix things. Over time, this creates a habit of putting others first while quietly placing themselves last. This pattern slowly turns the empath into a people pleaser. They say yes when they actually want to say no. They agree to things that drain their energy. They accept behavior that does not respect their worth because deep down they fear disappointing others. Approval becomes something they chase, even when it costs them their peace of mind. The empath might believe that if they are kind enough, patient enough, or giving enough, people will eventually appreciate them the same way they appreciate others. But life has a way of teaching powerful lessons. After repeated experiences of being taken for granted, misunderstood, or emotionally used, the empath begins to notice something important. The more they abandon their own needs to satisfy others, the more invisible they become. Their kindness gets mistaken for weakness. Their patience gets mistaken for permission. And their silence gets mistaken for acceptance. This realization can be painful at first. The empath may feel betrayed by people they trusted or exhausted by relationships that only seemed balanced on the surface. They start to understand that constantly trying to earn love or approval is not healthy. True respect cannot grow in an environment where one person is always shrinking themselves to keep others comfortable. The transformation begins when the empath decides that their self-respect matters just as much as their compassion. Instead of constantly adjusting themselves to fit everyone else's expectations, they start paying attention to their own emotional limits. They begin asking themselves honest questions about how they feel in certain relationships, environments, and conversations. Slowly, the empath learns that protecting their peace is not selfish. Saying no does not make them cruel. Setting boundaries does not make them difficult. In fact, these actions are signs of emotional maturity and self-awareness. They begin to understand that kindness should never require them to tolerate disrespect. As this new mindset develops, their behavior starts to change in quiet but powerful ways. They stop explaining themselves excessively to people who refuse to understand. They stop chasing validation from individuals who never truly valued them. Instead of trying to keep everyone happy, they focus on maintaining their own inner balance. People who were used to the old version of the empath may feel confused by this change. Some may even react negatively because they can no longer take advantage of the empath's generosity. But the empath continues growing stronger through this process. They realize that real connections are built on mutual respect, not emotional sacrifice. Over time, the empath becomes someone who still cares deeply about others but refuses to lose themselves in the process. Their compassion remains strong, but it is now guided by self-respect. They no longer bend their identity just to gain acceptance. Instead, they stand calmly in their truth, understanding that the right people will appreciate them without requiring them to diminish who they are. Empaths are naturally generous people. Their instinct is to give. They give their time when someone needs support. They give their energy when someone feels weak. They give advice, understanding, patience, and compassion without expecting much in return. For a long time, this generosity feels natural to them because helping others brings a sense of purpose. Seeing someone feel better because of their words or presence can make an empath feel fulfilled. However, this constant giving can slowly become unbalanced. Many empaths begin to notice that while they are always present for others, the same effort is rarely returned. They are the ones answering late-night calls when someone is struggling. They are the ones offering encouragement when someone feels lost. They are the ones who remember birthdays, listen to long stories, and stay patient through emotional chaos. Yet when the empath is the one who needs support, the room often becomes quiet. At first, they may ignore this imbalance. They might convince themselves that people simply express care differently, or that their role is just to be the strong one. But over time, a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Some people begin to rely on the empath's kindness without ever appreciating it. Others may only appear when they need advice, comfort, or emotional reassurance. Once their needs are satisfied, they disappear until the next moment they require something again. This is when the empath begins to understand a difficult truth. Kindness without boundaries can attract people who only take. Either giving nature becomes a magnet for individuals who recognize that the empath will always be there, no matter how little they contribute to the relationship. What once felt like compassion now begins to feel like emotional exhaustion. The transformation begins when the empath finally recognizes the difference between healthy generosity and emotional overextension. They start noticing who truly values their presence and who simply benefits from it. Instead of automatically giving their time and energy to everyone, they pause and observe how people treat them in return. This awareness changes their behavior in subtle but powerful ways. They stop rushing to fix every problem they encounter. They stop offering unlimited emotional support to people who repeatedly drain them. They begin to understand that their energy is valuable and should not be given away carelessly. Gradually, the empath becomes more selective about where their compassion flows. They still care deeply about others, but they reserve their deepest support for people who show sincerity, loyalty, and appreciation. Relationships begin to feel more balanced because the empath is no longer carrying the emotional weight alone. Some individuals may feel surprised by this change. People who once had unlimited access to the empath's time and attention may notice that the empath is no longer as available as before. But this shift is not about becoming cold or distant. It is about protecting something precious, their emotional energy. As this transformation continues, the empath learns that true generosity does not mean giving everything away. Real compassion includes the wisdom to recognize when a connection is mutual and when it is one-sided. Their kindness becomes more intentional, guided by awareness rather than obligation. Instead of pouring their energy into every direction, they invest it in plaque, as where it can grow into genuine connection, respect, and emotional balance. One of the most powerful changes that happens in an empath's life is the transformation of their silence. In the early stages of their journey, silence often comes from fear. Many empaths avoid speaking up because they dislike conflict. They would rather keep the peace than risk upsetting someone. When disagreements happen, they often choose to stay quiet, even if something feels unfair or uncomfortable. They convince themselves that remaining silent will prevent arguments and maintain harmony. This tendency comes from the empath's deep sensitivity to emotional tension. Raised voices, harsh words, and emotional confrontation can feel overwhelming. Because they sense emotions so strongly, conflict can feel like chaos inside their mind. So instead of expressing their thoughts openly, they withdraw their voice and allow situations to pass, even when something inside them knows that the situation is wrong. Over time, this silence can create a painful pattern. People begin to assume that the empath will tolerate anything. Boundaries become blurred because the empath rarely pushes back. Manipulative individuals may take advantage of this quiet nature, knowing the empath is unlikely to challenge them directly. The empath might feel hurt, misunderstood, or ignored, yet still remain silent to avoid creating more tension. But repeated experiences slowly begin to awaken a new awareness inside the empath. They start realizing that silence used to protect peace can sometimes protect unhealthy behavior instead. Avoiding every conflict does not create harmony. It sometimes allows disrespect to continue unchecked. The empath begins to see that constantly suppressing their voice is slowly eroding their self-worth, This realization marks an important turning point. The empath begins to redefine what silence means in their life. Instead of silence being a sign of fear or avoidance, it becomes a deliberate choice. They stop using silence to hide their feelings and start using it as a boundary, rather than engaging in endless arguments with people who refuse to listen. The empath learns to withdraw their energy. They recognize that some individuals are not interested in understanding, only in dominating conversations or twisting words. Instead of wasting emotional energy trying to prove their perspective, the empath simply chooses not to participate in those cycles anymore. This new form of silence is calm and controlled. It does not come from weakness, but from clarity. The empath understands that not every situation deserves their response. Some misunderstandings cannot be fixed through explanation. Some conflicts are fueled by people who thrive on emotional reactions. By choosing silence in those moments, the empath protects their inner peace. They step away from conversations that drain them and from individuals who constantly provoke emotional turmoil. Their silence becomes a quiet declaration that their energy is valuable and will not be given away to endless drama. People who were once used to provoking reactions from the empath may find this change unsettling. When someone expects emotional responses but receives calm distance instead, it disrupts the pattern they relied on. The empath's silence removes the fuel that once fed those interactions. With time, this transformation brings a sense of inner stability. The empath still communicates openly with people who respect them and value honest dialogue, but when faced with manipulation, hostility, or unnecessary conflict, they remain steady and quiet, knowing that protecting their peace sometimes requires saying nothing at all. Another profound transformation that occurs in the life of an empath is the shift from emotional dependence on others to a deep sense of inner independence. In the earlier stages of their journey, many empaths unknowingly attach their emotional stability to the reactions, approval, and presence of the people around them. Because they care so deeply about relationships, they often measure their own worth through how others treat them. A kind word can lift their spirit for hours, while a cold response or rejection can weigh heavily on their mind. This emotional sensitivity can cause the empath to invest a large portion of their identity into their connections with others. They might work extremely hard to maintain relationships, constantly checking whether people are happy with them, whether they said the right thing, or whether someone might be upset. Even small misunderstandings can lead to long periods of overthinking. Their mind replays conversations, searching for what they could have done differently. In this phase, the empath's happiness often becomes tied to external validation. If people appreciate them, they feel secure. If people withdraw or criticize them, they may feel shaken. This creates an emotional roller coaster where their inner peace rises and falls depending on the behavior of others. Although the empath genuinely values connection, this pattern slowly becomes exhausting because their emotional stability is no longer fully in their own control. Life experiences eventually begin to challenge this pattern. Disappointments, broken trust, or unbalanced relationships teach the empath that relying too heavily on external approval can lead to constant emotional instability. They begin to recognize that even the people they care about deeply cannot always provide the reassurance or understanding they hope for. Everyone carries their own struggles, limitations, and blind spots. This realization pushes the empaths toward a powerful foot in perspective. Instead of constantly seeking validation from the outside world, they begin to build a stronger relationship with themselves. They start paying attention to their own thoughts, values, and emotional needs. Rather than asking, "Do others approve of me?" they begin asking, "Am I living in alignment with who I truly am?" This inner reflection creates the foundation for emotional independence. The empath starts trusting their own judgment more. They become less shaken by every opinion or reaction they encounter. Compliments are appreciated, but they are no longer necessary for self-worth. Criticism may still be considered, but it no longer defines their identity. As this inner strength develops, relationships begin to feel different. The empath no longer approaches connections with a sense of emotional dependency. Instead of needing people to validate their existence, they simply choose to share their life with those who respect and understand them. Their presence in relationships becomes a choice rather than a necessity. This transformation also reduces the urge to chase people who are distant or inconsistent. In the past, the empath might have tried harder to win someone's attention or affection. Now they understand that genuine connections do not require constant pursuit. The right people naturally meet them in the middle, creating a balanced exchange of care and respect. With emotional independence comes a calm sense of stability. The empath still values love, friendship, and meaningful connections, but their sense of self no longer depends on those relationships. They stand firmly within their own identity, knowing that their worth exists regardless of who enters or leaves their life. The final stage of an empath's transformation is the development of deep awareness. In the earlier parts of their life, empaths often experience the world prime, airily through emotion. They feel things intensely and respond with compassion almost automatically. When someone is struggling, they instinctively move closer to help. When someone expresses pain, they respond with understanding and patience. This emotional openness makes them incredibly supportive individuals, but it can also make them vulnerable to manipulation or misunderstanding. In the beginning, many empaths assume that everyone experiences emotions in the same sincere way that they do. They believe that when people show kindness, it comes from a genuine place. When someone apologizes, they assume it means true regret. When someone promises change, they trust that the promise carries honest intention. Because the empath naturally values honesty and emotional depth, they often project those same qualities onto others. However, life gradually teaches them that not everyone operates with the same emotional sincerity. Through experience, they begin to encounter different patterns of behavior. Some individuals say the right words, but consistently repeat the same harmful actions. Others may show temporary kindness only when they need something. Certain people may even manipulate emotions intentionally, knowing that the empath's compassion will make them easier to influence. These experiences can be painful at first because they challenge the empath's natural belief in the goodness of others. Moments of betrayal, dishonesty, or manipulation force the empath to look deeper at human behavior. Instead of relying only on what people say, they begin to observe what people consistently do. This shift from emotional reaction to careful observation marks a powerful stage of growth. Gradually, the empath becomes more aware of behavioral patterns. They start recognizing subtle signs in how people communicate, how they handle responsibility, and how they treat others when no one is watching. Rather than trusting words alone, they pay attention to consistency, actions, and long-term behavior. This awareness gives the empath a new level of clarity. They can sense when someone's intentions are genuine and when something feels misaligned. And when something feels misaligned, situations that once confused them begin to make more sense because they are no longer looking only through the lens of emotion. They combine their natural sensitivity with observation and wisdom. As this awareness deepens, the empath becomes far more difficult to manipulate. They notice contradictions in behavior much earlier than before. They recognize emotional manipulation, guilt tactics, and empty promises more quickly. Instead of constantly giving people endless chances to prove themselves, they begin making decisions based on patterns they observe over time. This transformation does not remove the empath's compassion. They still care deeply about people and still believe in kindness. The difference is that their empathy is now guided by wisdom rather than blind trust. They understand that caring for others does not require ignoring reality. With this heightened awareness, the empath becomes someone who sees the emotional landscape of relationships with remarkable clarity. They understand who brings sincerity into their life and who brings confusion. They recognize which connections encourage growth and which ones slowly drain their energy. This combination of emotional depth and clear awareness creates a powerful balance. Falling from car awareness, the empath no longer moves through life, only reacting to feelings. Instead, they move with calm perception, understanding the intentions, patterns, and energies that shape the relationships around them. So if you feel different lately, if you feel calmer, quieter, more distant from chaos, if you no longer tolerate what you once accepted, do not worry. You are not losing your empathy. You are becoming something stronger. You are becoming an awakened empathy, someone who feels deeply but stands firmly in their power. And once an empathy reaches that stage, they are no longer easy to manipulate. They are impossible to control.